So I'm Dave Choban. I'm the vice president of our professional services. So I lead the team that would, ultimately work with you if you move forward with Nuventive. It'll be my team members that'll be helping you stand up the platform, as well as being your managed service consultants ongoing over time to, address any new configurations or enhancements or anything you might want to do down the road. And I'll speak more to that in a second. So I'm going to be in a live demo environment. So today I'm going to focus primarily on the program review element, since this is the program review subcommittee. I'll quickly mention some other areas that we can support. And I think you'll see as I go through the platform that, this is a blank shell when you first, if you started purchasing this. I gave the example when I talked to Aaron last time. It's like buying Excel. There's nothing in it when you start, but there's a lot of tools we can build all these various elements you might need. So it's my team, this managed services team, that's very intimate with those tools. So when we talk about it being very configurable, this is not getting developers involved in writing. This is them using the tools, just like in Excel. Oh, I want a pivot table. I want a sum. I'm going to add another sheet to the bottom, cross tab the sheets to the other sheet. We have a similar kind of concept with the platform. So I'm going to show you how we've set it up for program review, but it is important that you understand what I'm showing you today is a demo database. So if your terms aren't right, if the language isn't your exact language, and I'll be a broken record pointing that out to you today, so you don't walk away and say, yeah, it was nice, but they called it this and we call it that. Those are all changed, just like in Excel. There's the column headings you put across the top or what you call a sheet at the bottom is all flexible. So with that, I'm going to kill my camera and actually just get into the demo, show you how it works, and then I'll come at the end and then we'll open up for questions, and I might be jumping back in to show you various areas there. So let me do that. All right, so kill my video. Perfect. Okay, so this is all hosted in the cloud. We are SOC 2 compliant. We have 50888, certifications. We can provide you all those kind of documents, if you decide to move forward on any of that kind of techies. Where I'm going to start, though, is just kind of pointing out that when you first come into the platform, there is this unit selector that would ultimately have all of the, I'll use the term unit generically, the SEC units, whether those are student support, admins, co-curricular groups, obviously all your academic programs. So this concept of these units helps us in that everybody has a place to call home, and you'll get to decide what users, when they log in, get to see the biology unit, which ones see chemistry, which ones see counseling office. And you can define the various roles for those users. Some people on the subcommittee would likely have read-only perhaps to all of these units. So you can drop down into any unit at any time just by typing, and you're going to drop into that particular unit. I'll come back to that concept in a bit, but the roles and what we allow you to do are very granular, down to every menu I'm showing you today. You can dictate, oh, does this user even see that menu? Do they have edit access? Do they have read-only? So lots of granularity there. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to kind of keep talking about, we have tools in our toolbox. So one of the big tools we have in our toolbox to build out this platform we need for you to support your program review is, we call them Improve Analytics. So what that means is Nuventive, my team, this managed services team that's going to be part of your team, can generate and produce these kinds of dashboards based on the type of information we're collecting. Now, we don't know all the exact fields and information you're collecting yet. This is an example of a dashboard that's really kind of geared around learning outcomes. So if I was in the psychology program, when I come in, I want my home screen to give me a bird's eye of where I am, what's going on with this. I'm going to pop up a home screen that we use for, this is one that comes from one of our schools. This home screen is geared more towards their program review. So you can see, once we go through the process with this school and we say, okay, talk to me about your process. What do you do? What's your language? Then we work with you to say, what kind of home screen might you need? Here's a good example of a home screen where this unit would come in this case, biology, saying, did I do my executive summary? Is my data reflection complete? Is this done? Is this done? What are the goals that came out of my program review? Do I have action plans for each? Have I aligned them to a particular higher level goal? So you can see, do I need resources? So this kind of dashboard can be customized and produced based on what the process and your language is. So big tool I've talked about, improve analytics. I'm going to show you a couple other examples of that as we go through. All right. So where does all the information come from? So the next big tool we have is our menuing system. So just like in Excel, when you have all those sheets at the bottom, they're blank when you first start. This is blank. But we start building this menu based on what processes you want at SEC. Sounds like where you're starting is just program review. So we would call it whatever you wanted. If you want a menu called program review, and that's all you would need in your menu to start off, then you would just have one item in there. But the beauty is, if over time you said, well, wait a minute, you're telling me Nuventive can do learning outcomes assessment, we can also do strategic planning, we can keep building this over time. So it's not a matter of users go to a different module and something else. This is just part of it that you can build out and go through over time in various processes. The nice part is all of these various processes can talk to each other and link to one another. Okay, so that's kind of a high level of what we have here. So the other point is these menus can be unique for each kind of unit. So typically we call this a template. We'll build a template or a menu and then say, oh, all of our academic programs need to see that menu. But we can just as easily say, oh, all of our administrative or student support units, they might have a different looking home screen, and we want our menu to be different for them. They have effectiveness plans and co-curricular outcomes or whatever their menus are. So it's very flexible in that regard. So I'm going to go back into that psych program because I'm going to use that as my example today to talk more about program review. All right, so now we're going to go program review. So I'm going to talk about two menus here when I'm or three menu options when I'm in the program. So I'm going to talk about this general information. I'm going to dive into the program review options and then a little bit about the document library. So just to kind of acclimate you on what typically happens with the application is on the left side of the form, left side of your screen, you're typically going to see some kind of form or forms that I'm being asked to fill out. So in this case, I've set it up so this unit can give me some general information about themselves. What's your mission? Who's your chair? Whatever other kind of information you see. Here, when you see these cards, we call this a card. I can double click on a card, and I'm going to do that now. And that card will open up. So now I can get into the edit mode of whatever fields we've defined for you. Some nice things about our forms, we can customize the help at the top of every form, telling the user what we want them to do on the form, but we can also provide help on each field. So watch what happens when I click on this department chair. When I click on it, that help will automatically pop up. So when I'm showing you the program review forms, you should be thinking, oh, we can put help at the top of it, and every field on that form, we can guide them on what we want to do, what kind of information we want them to provide for that field. So forms are typically on the left. What you get on the right-hand side is what we call our information panel. So this information panel, we can put PDFs, Word, Excel, PowerPoint documents, and we can put links to live URLs. Things like maybe there's a labor market website you want to be able to point your users to during program review to reflect on how the need of their program. Perhaps your IR department has written Power BI reports that show retention, graduation numbers. We can put all of those reports, live reports, in this information panel. So what happens now, when a user clicks on these thumbnails, and I'll click on this one, we go into this split screen mode. So now the user would have that information at their fingertips while they're looking at it on the right. So then they can come over on the left and complete whatever form we're providing to them. So this is just a very simple example of a help document. You could provide a PDF with a step through, do this first, do this second. You can put videos, a link to a YouTube video over here. And I'm going to show you lots of examples of this information panel. So fill out a form on the left, give the users what they might need at their fingertips on the right information panel. All right, so that's kind of a good introduction to how these screens are going to work. Now I want to get into the program review process. on how I've defined it in a typical process we might see. So under the program review, what we usually see is some kind of comprehensive review or some kind of reflection, whether that's every 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Some schools will have a 3-year review, an annual review, whatever it is. We can build a menu and say, that's where I want you to go reflect. Then what happens often is out of that reflection comes some very specific goals we want you working on until the next review comes on about, so we can then look at your progress on those specific goals out of that. And then finally, often out of these reviews come this capability to request resources. I need something to support the goals or other areas that I'm working on. So I'm gonna, now you might have 2 others. That's again where my team would work with you to say, talk to me about your process and let's build this out and use the terms you need to support it. All right, so let's start with comprehensive review. So this is that area where typically schools will have some kind of form we need to fill out or some kind of template, fill out this template. So we treat these cards again, we can have all of your reviews at the user's fingertips. So what was my review in 16-19? What was it in 2023? What is it going to be in 2024? So a couple things on this are, just to give you some acclimation, you can see we can tag all the fields on these underlying cards, all the forms, and I'm going to open one of these up in a second to show you, and we can say all these fields have to be completed, or these 8 have to be filled out before we consider it complete. We can see who last modified it and when they modified the whole form. And then we also have the ability to lock these cycles down. So when you say the 16-19, that is over. We're done with that. You can lock it so that users can still double click and open it up and look at it, but it won't let them edit or change it. Only people with very high powered permissions, the platform administrators at your institution, would be able to go in and actually change it. So that's one of the things we have with these on this. Before I open one up, I'm going to give a couple other, because I know these were topics you had asked about. Another thing we can do is we have an audit log on all of these. So the audit log, when you come into it, will tell you the date, who was actually made the change, what field they modified, what the old value in the field was, and what the new value in the field is. So every entry, every time someone hits save, we're adding it to this audit log, and then you can filter down and show, various, just the last 30 days, the last year, and what you might want to see. So there is an audit log on all these forms. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to double click on one of these to kind of show you some capabilities here. So I'm going to open up this 24-27 because it's open and I've started filling this one out. Oh, one other big point here is there's also the ability to copy a card and say, oh, I want to move whatever I put for 2023, roll that forward, and now it's going to come up. So if I were to copy this, I'm going to show you. So if I hit copy, what it's doing, it's getting all that information and saying, oh, it's the next year, 24-27. So the form is already filled out with all the information I put in from the previous cycle. And now I can go edit, delete, clean it up, but it's a quick way to say a lot of the information, or at least want to have it in front of me while I'm filling it out. So I remember what I said last year, it's right in front of me at that point. Okay, I'm going to close this and I'm going to come back into this one so I can make some edits. So I'm going to double click on this card and it opens it up. And now I'm in the edit mode of the card. So when you build these forms, we can have various sections of the form. So mine is, give me some general information, talk to me about various data trends, talk to me about your student learning, talk to me about engagement and success, and maybe a place to submit your plan and say, I'm ready for it to be looked at. On each of these sections, we can monitor, did they fill it all out? And each section will tell you who the last person to go in and edit the section and when they edited the section. So when I expand any one of these, it comes down, these would be your fields. Again, we can put customized help on every one of these. And on each question, we can put customized help for that particular question. So when you put your cursor in that question, we can pop up right away, what is it we want you to tell you in a particular field. So this is where this right-hand panel can really start coming to life. So let's use this as an example. So in my example, I'm saying, talk to me about your data trend, your graduation rates, what's going on. Well, this is where if your IR department already has a Power BI, some kind of dashboard we can put a link to that dashboard over here. And now this would be your report running, not our. Nuventive wouldn't build enrollment reports for you. This was the reports you already own, but these are live reports. These are not static snapshots of reports. So you can navigate through, look at this report, be looking at that data and saying, that's the critical piece right there. So when I'm over on the left talking about it, I can paste that in and say, that's what I was looking at the time when I was telling you everything is great in our program, or we have some concerns. So information at your fingertips where you might need it. How this also plays out then is, so let's say you were down in the student learning section. Now this is where I think you said you're using eLumen, and you're going to continue to use eLumen for the student learning assessment and all that.
Correct.
But when it comes time for you to reflect on it and say, well, summarize over the last 3 years, major things you've learned. This is where on this right-hand side, we could go in here and have the reports from eLumen at your fingertips. So there is a way. Now, what we don't do is say, well, we're going to go, unless eLumen has reports that are accessible via URL, then we could treat it just like a Power BI URL and post it over there. And when you click on it, it's going to open up that report. But as a worst case scenario, you would upload a PDF or a Word document or a report from that unit. That way, I'm going to open up one of ours. This is our assessment report. So when I click on it, that report, whatever your eLumen reports look like, this is what our reports look like. But whatever your eLumen reports look like, oh, here's my outcome. Here's how I said I was going to assess it. What were the results? I can have that at my fingertips while I'm over on the left reflecting on it and copying and pasting and doing whatever what I might need to do. So information and context. Okay. You filled out your form, you've reflected. One of the examples, I'll just show you an example of a report you can generate from that. So this is, again, one of our reports saying, I want to run it for one of my program review cycles. Well, they're all right at your fingertips. I'm going to run it for the 2023 cycle, for example. All of our reports we generate in Word. So these are Word documents, Word reports. You can go up and say, I want to save it as a PDF or some other format. But by right out of the gate, they're just Word documents. So here is that form, basically. What's your annual summary, general information, talk to me about your enrollment trends, all the questions that you would put in. These can be rich text fields as you're looking at. We can also upload and attach documents as part of ours. So as part of these forms, we can give the user areas to upload documents. So here's a PDF document. And if I was reviewing this, I can just click on it. And now whatever I've uploaded is going to be over here. If this was, they could have uploaded their eLumen report as an example, as an attachment, and then that would just open up the eLumen report. Okay, so program review, reflect. I can generate a report. But what some schools do is they say, oh, as part of that reflection, we're going to put a text box on there, place for you to enter your goals for next year. And we certainly can do that. We can put any fields on those forms. You're going to tell us what fields, what is it? Is it a date field? Is it a rich text? Is it long text, short text? What a drop down field, whatever that might be. But we believe a better way to do it is not just to come and say, here's a text box, put your goals in it, and then 3 years later, apologize why you didn't make any progress. What we feel the better way to do it is say, let's give you a spot to actually define each of those goals and be able to annually report on the progress you're making towards those goals. So here, when I go to this program improvement goals area, now we kind of have a little different looking screen. So on this screen, each of these cards are one of the goals that I've come up with. So develop writing skills. We have a diversity concern in our program. Graduation rates are slack. Let's get on those. If I had another one, I would click the plus. It's going to give me another card, and I would have the information on here. But the same UI, I can double click it. When I double click it, now I have more detail. So what is the goal? Here I have, and we can put other fields. Again, you can put pop-ups on what, help guides or anything on all these fields. Here's where it gets really nice, because not only do I have a goal, I want to align that goal to something bigger. So how does my goal of developing writing skills align to the bigger things at SCC? How might it align to my strategic plan? So when I click strategic plan, these would be your strategic goals. Now I'm saying, well, developing writing skills, we think directly supports growth, and indirectly it ties to student success, and directly to whatever our options we might choose here. And we can have lots of levels of granularities, or some schools just say, give me an X. I just want it to align or not align. So you put in a goal, you said how it aligns to things bigger than you. And now, and this is where, if you're, well, I'll get to that later. But now what you're doing is you're coming back and saying, all right, let's provide updates on this. Just because we do a 3-year review doesn't mean we put the goal in and forget about it for 3 years. The idea is that you say, I have a goal now annually, I'm going to come in and provide updates on that. Well, where were you? Well, due to resource limitations, the goal is postponed, no work accomplished. Came back the next year, we can put an update in. You hit the green plus, it's going to take you to the form where you can provide, what year am I talking about? 23, 24. And again, these forms are customized to address the questions you might be asking your users. So a place to log all of this. So now when I run that report, that program review report, just like I ran before, we can concatenate what was that reflective part of my program review. And now I want to see the detailed goals and the progress I've made towards them. So 3 years from now, I can say, well, remind me what their report, what they said in 22 or 2023. And so this would be all that long narrative. But then we could say, and then at the bottom of that, I want to see each of those goals and the updates you've been making annually on those goals. So develop writing skills. Well, in 22, 23, due to resource, we did nothing. Came back, we did this. Now, what about your diversity goal? What's the update? What about your student? So you have a place to very specifically log your progress on the goal, so we can monitor and not be surprised in 3 years that nothing was done on any goal, or all your goals were accomplished. And you can put different information, same information over on this right-hand information panel. Remember, PDF, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and URLs. All right, so now another thing is, well, we have resource needs out of these program improvement goals. Again, multiple ways to do this. Well, some schools would say, oh, when you define the goal, put some fields on here so we can track what resources do they need to achieve this goal. Other schools open it up a little wider and say, well, you might need resources for things other than just those goals. So screen should look familiar. We try to do a common UI where if you had a resource request, you can click the plus. It's going to take you to a blank form and add it as a card. But here I can see I need 3 laptop computers, ACAT conference attendance, whatever they might be. Let me double click it, open it up. So now I can see this form has a lot of detail. We would ask you, well, what do you want to know when you ask for a resource? The type of resource. Oh, is it equipment? Is it personnel? And what we're doing here with these drop downs in particular is we're setting ourselves up, because I'm going to show you some nice dashboards where you can say, well, I just want to see all the equipment requests this year, and specifically all the equipment requests as they align to our strategic plan. And I'm going to show you some good examples of that in a couple seconds here. So you're going to build this form, or we're going to ask you what fields are on this. I know there was a question around how do we roll things forward? So this is the beauty of this model is if you didn't get funded for your 3 laptop computers and you want to ask for it again, all you're really doing is saying, well, let's ask for it again in 23, 24, update any information, and it's there. That was the effort to say, I need 3 laptop computers next year. So you're tracking, you've been asking for this thing for 3 years to no avail. And the mapping capacity is what's really nice about this, is because just like you can map your goals to bigger things, you can also map your resource requests to different things. So how does my resource request align to those goals that I came out of my program review? Well, these are those goals that we just pulled from the program review, those improvement goals. If you were using this for a learning assessment in our system, how do this resource request align to my program learning outcomes, for example? How do those same 3 laptop computers help align to a strategic plan? What about to my gen ed goals? So you're able to ask for something and show all the areas that request is aligned to. I'm going to speak to funding decision in a second, but I want to show you some other things, and then I'll wrap it up when I talk about how we tie back into these funding. So I've shown you kind of a high level, kind of the concept of the program review, a little bit of the UI. One other big point here in this is that there is a document. Every unit gets a document library where they can upload documents. So they can create folders. A lot of schools will create a folder called historical, assessment reports or historical program reviews, and have a place just to store each of the program reviews that they've run for that program in the program itself. So I use this as an example of how you can pull in old reports and have them at your fingertips and available. I want to speak to the report that I showed you, that program review report. So I ran that report from one unit. Well, we have this concept of parent-child relationships in our database. So any unit can be a child of another unit. So in your example, we could create, let's say you had each dean was responsible to review the programs within his division. Well, at that point, what you can do is we can create a parent-child relationship where a unit in this dropdown would say Dean of Arts and Science or whatever it might be, and associate all the children programs to that dean. Well, that dean or anybody who has the permissions to go to that dean's unit can run one report and say, I want to see all my children's program reviews, and it'll just go one after the other and generate one big Word document bookmarked on each program. So you would have all those programs in one, or we can run them individually and split them out. So I want an individual document for each program review. So there's a very quick way to run 100 program reviews. You don't have to go in one at a time, is the takeaway from that point, just to save you some effort. Okay, so I've been in one program showing you what one program looks like. Well, you're, as a committee, going to want to come in and say, well, where are all the programs? So let's come back to that dashboard concept. So we would likely build some kind of similar dashboard for you based on what you tell us you want. What's that burning question you want to know real quick? Where are they with their program review? Have they done this? Have they done that? Who's ready for it to be reviewed? Has it been reviewed? All those different kinds of questions might come up where one dashboard, and this again is a dashboard from a school that we're doing this with, that they wanted this. They didn't want to have to go into every unit and look. They just wanted to see one report. So these dashboards are the fun part of the effort of, once we have all the forms and we're collecting all the information, then we step back and say, okay, what does the leadership team want to know at a click of a button? What does the committee members want to know? What does a dean want to know? What does anybody want to know without having to go in and look at a lot of things, is the idea. So I'm going to drive that point home before I open it up and get into some questions here. Is I have a unit called Provost, VP of Academic Affairs as an example. This could be the president's cabinet. It can be whatever division you want to say. You log in, we're going to build a menu for you. Now, your menu is going to be around process. Your question is, what are we doing around program assessment? How are we doing with this? How are we doing with that? And when you go to these areas, I'm going to use resource request as an example because we've spoken to that one. You don't want to see, you want to just report. I want to see what's going on. So here's an example of a report we built for a school where they took their mission statement and parsed it out. And then they said, when you ask for a resource, align it to one of the elements of our mission statement as one of the things we want you to align it to. So from a leadership, you can come in and say, well, whose leadership is a part of our mission statement, for example, what's everybody doing around, or what's anybody asking resource around our leadership? So here you can see when I did that, it filtered right down and said, oh, the honors program's looking for money, athletics wants some money, cheerleaders are needing money, whatever those areas, those units that we've defined at SEC, would we be able to see what they're looking for? And then you can, these are again fun. I just want to see all the travel expenses. Are people looking to travel? There's a lot of travel associated with leadership. Well, who's traveling on leadership? Well, back to the dance team, the cheerleaders, that's where our money is going and how that's being aligned. So powerful reporting to give you a bird's eye on what's going on. Here's some other examples of reports. Show me the big ticket items. Who's looking for over, close to $250,000? Well, all my deans are asking for salary money, and that's what they've aligned it to. Here we show reports that are aligning to your strategic plan. So here's these are might be your strategic, high level goals and priorities that you have in your strategic plan. Remember, I showed you the mapping, how you can align a resource request to that. I want to go under growing student population, and this report is broken down by those categories. and let's look for operating expenses. Who's looking for money for operating expenses? Graduate studies wonder what they want. Well, here's what they're looking for, how much they're looking for each of those. So when I show the resource request, I always want to make a strong point here. We are not a budgeting system. It's at this point in the show, you've said what you need, you've aligned it, you've demonstrated you're asking for something. This is where we would say, these reports, we can export this information out into Excel spreadsheets. We can design a report specific with all the fields you need and the format you need to get it out of our system. Let your budgeting process take over, your prioritization and everything you need. Once you've decided what's going to be funded, if you remember back when I was in the psychology program, I showed you how you can request something, you can map it, and there was a tab that said funding decision. Well, once something's been funded, what schools will often do is say, for those 100, 150 items that are funded, we're going to go back in and update those particular requests and tell them that it was funded on those forms. And there's a lot of nuance to that, but we can make it read only so the users can't say it's funded. Only certain people can fill those forms out. But it allows you then to historically run reports next year, again, a dashboard to say, well, remind me what we funded last year and the goals that were associated to the things that we funded. So now if somebody said, I need 3 laptop computers, we can say, well, we gave you those 3 laptop computers and you aligned it to a particular goal. Let's go see what the progress of that goal was. So we can take it backwards then by coming back and saying what things were funded. All right, I'm going to stop there. Aaron, I think if I forget if there were other questions that you wanted me to dive into, but let me open it up for questions now.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Dave. I just want to acknowledge the sophistication of this tool and just say thank you. It's I've been through enough demos. You can tell a good demo when they're actually using the product and they're not showing you slide decks and screenshots. So thank you for that, Dave.
Sure.
I'd like to hand it over to our committee members to see if anybody, I have a couple questions queued up, but there may be pressing questions from our committee members they may have. Any questions from our committee members?
Just one quick one here. When the reports get generated in Word, the question I have is, do those reports come out with accessibility built in? So I'm thinking about headings, making sure that if somebody were to be using a reader going through it, would that already be built into it, or is that something we would have to modify after the report was generated?
That's a great question. I tell you what I'll do is I will get the answer and then we'll send one of the, I'll show that report I just generated. I'll throw it over to you guys. I'll send you that, Aaron, as a Word document. And then I think it was Kale, you can go ahead and put it on a reader, but our guys will have an answer to that. I know when they go through the certification, we have a third-party company that does the 508 testing and the readers and on the whole application. I don't specifically know about the Word report, but I do know there's bookmarkings, there is headings in that, but I'm just not really. So we'll find, I'll get you our answer and then we'll send it over and you can do your own, if you have somebody that has a reader to see what it is.
Okay, Dave, at the same time, would you, whenever that file is sent over, could you send us a copy of your VPAT as well?
Yes.
Because I think some of that information would be contained within that VPAT report too.
Yep.
Perfect. All right. Any additional questions? All right. Well, Dave, I do have a couple of questions. You had shown us the ability to roll over a program review to a subsequent planning cycle, and that information would contain everything that was submitted in the prior iteration or the previous iteration of that program review. So the question I have, and this is more from an administrative perspective, can that be done in bulk for all programs or a selected set of programs, or does that need to be done individually one at a time?
That would have to be done individually. It would, right now, there's not a way to do that I can think of how to bulk them over. I mean, are we talking hundreds or are we talking 50? Do you know?
Well, we've got a lot of programs, and our current process is that everybody does program review all at the same time. So if I wanted to, like, if I were, the administrator of this tool, and I wanted to just roll over everybody's, program review from the last time, assuming there's no changes to the template, and we can do that, then it sounds like somebody would have to go in and do that one at a time, or if we provide the ability to the end users, they would be able to do that on their own. I'm just curious if it's possible
Yeah.
to do that in bulk.
The end users can do it. If you have edit capability, even if this is locked,
Yeah.
so the way it does work, you raised a good point. These cycles, we can change the form from cycle to cycle. So let's pretend in 24, 27, you added 3 questions and removed 1. Well, when you try to copy it over, we base the copy on the actual label of the question. If the label of the question is identical in the next cycle, we'll copy the information directly into it. So
Fantastic. So we could add questions and still retain information from the
yes.
previous cycle. Okay. And then
But if
obviously
it's
if we
new
remove
questions,
questions,
we'll move
then
blank. Right.
right. Got it. Okay. Very
But
good.
yeah, each user, if they said, no, I'm gonna go from start, I don't really care about it. I'm gonna have last year's report running on the right. And I'm gonna go hit the green plus and start with a new blank form. So that's the other option to say, well, so much has changed. I just want to see what I had on the right-hand side, and copy and pasting from that Word document in perhaps, or they could just, you saw how quick it is. They hit copy, it waits a second, they're off and running. So, that would be the option.
Right. Very good. The resource request form that you had shared, is that as editable as any of the other templates, like for program review or potentially annual planning?
Yeah.
Okay.
There is no resource request. This could be butterfly collection or album, and here's the album, the artist, the year. You're going to tell us what fields, what order, which ones are required, which ones are optional, what options in the drop down. So this is completely customizable. There's no
Awesome.
predefined fields on
Got
this.
it. Yeah. So many times, we've vetted products and, we're told anything you have, you can build it in the system, but then when you implement the system, they're all of a sudden not as flexible as we're led to believe. So whatever form we have and are using for requesting resources, we could and we're using Microsoft Forms, so it's not very sophisticated. There's no skip logic or anything like that.
Right.
So it sounds like we'd be able to implement that here as well.
Yeah, and I'm all about making sure there's no miscommunication because that's the ingredients for disappointment. So
Right.
rich text, long text, short text, drop down fields, multi-select fields. So you can have a drop down, you can have multiple selects like this one I can put in short text, long text, date fields, numeric fields. We can require fields, we can put them in the order. And then we can also add a field called a related document field. So you can say attach last year, blah, 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 blah. And that type of field, I don't think I have any of them put on here. I don't on this form. But then they get a little plus, they click it, they can browse out to their document library, upload documents and attach them. So those are the kinds of fields we have. So if you said, oh, Dave, you said any form and we want checkboxes. Well, we would accomplish that with a drop down. We don't have a checkbox field, but we have a drop down to say, pick what you want, multi-select, single select, yes, no, true, false type thing.
Very good. Okay. Yeah. I think it's important, and I'm glad you highlighted the ability to attach or upload associated documentation. For example, using resource requests as, and I know we're kind of getting off topic a little bit because our focus is on program review, but it's all kind of interrelated anyways. But being able to provide like price quotes for the resource that's being requested, because we do require that as part of our process. So it sounds like we'd be able to accomplish that.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Document library access. It looked like each department had its own document library. But is there a larger bucket that documents from all libraries are accessible within? For example, if we wanted to see, or retrieve, a document of a certain title that should be in everybody's library, would we be able to access that? Um, if not, I'm not sure what the alternative would be. I do know with our current system, anytime we want information for a particular entity, you have to drill into that entity. And sometimes it's, this tab and then a sub tab and then a link here and then wait for it to load and so forth. And then we're in just that department's information. From an administrative perspective, or even from the committee's perspective, it would be helpful if we could have broader access to all of the document libraries. I'm not sure if that's possible though.
Yeah, so I think I would, so, just the way you said it, we could go the other way. You can share a folder. So you can have a folder at a kind of a higher level and say, I'm going to put documents in there and I want that folder to be accessible to all my children, anybody below me type of idea. But so my question to you would be is, what's that quote of, Henry Ford, if I did what everybody asked me, we'd all have faster horses. And so when I hear that, I'd be like, well, what document? Give me an example. And I would be thinking, why not just run the report? Or are you thinking this some external document that everybody happened to call the same name? And now I wanted to talk about that AI question you asked as well. Maybe that's where you were going with that.
That's exactly where I was going with that, to be able to point something to a folder and have it ingest, interpret, and spit out some summaries of sort.
Right. A great question. So let me speak to that. So obviously a very exciting area, and we don't have anything today, but we've already started engaging with one of our existing clients who has a very good use case. It sounds like it's very similar to yours, that we said, we're all in. So we're partnering with that client kind of in this collaboration mode with their use case and then expanding that out. But this would be an exciting thing if you guys were like, oh, if you move forward to be involved in that kind of concept. But today there is nothing. And the way you described it, that will have to come out of that somehow to be able to point to everybody's common folders. And we can kind of do that now. If the folders are named correct, then we can point to all the documents in a folder, because we do that with our information library. If you put a document in a particular folder, it'll automatically appear on that right-hand information panel. So I think they're using that same concept.
Okay. All right. Well, that's encouraging. Thank you for sharing that. It did sound like, though, I mean, every entity would be a child of the parent Santiago Canyon College. So in theory, we could generate one document to contain every single program review.
That's it.
And then point AI, like Gemini, Notebook LM, for example, and say, ingest just the information contained within this document, totally isolated from the World Wide Web and so forth, and ask it questions, right? Interrogate the information that's provided within, and you get
that's it. That's exactly it, Aaron. Why go to 100 documents? We can generate one. It might be 1,000 pages, but that's how you would get it, unless these are external documents that we're not generating that you want to use and store in our system.
Right. And I'm thinking too, like, legacy program reviews that, would be uploaded as PDFs or something similar. We wouldn't necessarily be able to pull all of that into kind of one single document, but
we might. I know we're derailing. This is fun stuff. If you attach those as attachments, if those AI tools can dive down into the attached documents, because we can zip it all up and all the attachments are part of that. So now you can get to all those old ones as well. So.
Yeah, and I want to be clear too that our at least my interest in AI really is to tackle those things that really it was I think originally designed for, kind of those menial tedious tasks that aren't necessarily complex, but they're time consuming. I know there's some other pieces, right? Well, but, maybe summarizing a cluster of program reviews for higher order entities like our academic senate or our college council and so forth. So this all sounds encouraging, but it also sounds like the output format is such that it would be conducive for us to use AI for analysis purposes. All right. So that's it for me. Any other questions from committee members?
I just had a question on like the implementation and design part. When you say, you tell us, what does that look like? Is that a call, a form we submit, a one-on-one person
Oh,
that
great.
does?
Yeah.
How does that work?
Yeah, so just real high, we can send you an implementation document, usually about 3 months. We'll meet once a week with, whoever the team members are. It typically starts with a smaller team. And then as we start building it out, we're going to get your team in there quick in a sample unit with these forms built out. But it usually starts with you sending us stuff saying, hey, here's our current form, a couple conversations, and we'll go build something and get you guys in. So then you can start saying that ain't gonna, nope, nope, nope. Or can you make the help say this? Here's the help. And it's kind of this give and take, but your team will be in there pretty, in 4 weeks. This shell is out and there's one unit that says sample. Everybody can go in there and play around and, and we meet weekly. Usually it's weekly to get feedback, task and go back and forth. And in 3 months, you're up and running and flying along.
Okay, yeah, because that was kind of my second question was, do you take a look at what we've currently been doing, build something that you recommend and have us tweak it, which it sounds like you're saying is what you would do.
Right.
Okay.
And then we always use the opportunity, just like that AI conversation. We don't necessarily need to do it that way anymore, perhaps. We don't need to put a document in every folder. Maybe we just run one report and point it to that. That's a great example of we would have this kind of give and take to say, well, why do you do it that way? Rather than just say, this is the way we've always done it, but if that's the way you want it and if we can support it, we'll certainly do it that way.
And then the ongoing support. So after we build it and then in 6 months, we're like, oh, we really should have done this. What does that look like?
Great question. So I didn't speak to it on this call, but we have a team that's going to be your team. It's a managed services team. As long as you have a contract, that team is, there. And so we do it that way because most schools do it incrementally. They start with program review. Then they say, hey, now we're ready for resource requesting. Oh, now we want to get into strategic planning. So we don't go away. And so you'll have this report writer, this configuration specialist, your lead consultant that are all part of those conversations. And you just pick up the phone and say, hey, we're ready for some changes. And barring they're not changes that we go, I wonder if there's a ripple effect to make that change. It's not just change a field or something. We would then say, hey, let's do a quick call, talk that through to make sure we're clear. But a lot of times it's, oh, can you add a field to this form, roll it to the next cycle? It's just emails, we do it and you're off and running.